All right, guys. Got a good friend of mine and client over the last couple of years, Andy. He goes by Andy O'Mel. I still can't pronounce your last name, honestly. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah, right.
How do you
Mhm.
say it?
My real last name or my
Yeah,
business last name? My
real last
last name is my real last name is Omachek.
name.
It's
Omich.
Ukrainian.
Okay.
And I remember when I met you when I was starting the personal training business, you were like, yo, shorten that a little bit. So,
Yeah.
so I go by Andy O'Mel. It's way easier to pronounce.
I mean, yeah, honestly, that's why I go by Jay Vincent. My
Yeah.
last name is like people can't say it. They
Yeah.
just butcher it, and I
Mhm.
got to the point where I was just sick of it. So I'm like, I'm going to just use my first and middle name. People think
It
it's like
works.
an alias to like hide my identity. It's like, dude,
Sure.
no. It's just you can't
No.
pronounce my last name.
Right. Exactly. Most times when people try to pronounce my last name, I hand them a tissue or something because it sounds not like it doesn't my last name doesn't look like how it's spelt. And then it doesn't always sound like how people pronounce it. So
Yeah, those Ukrainian Russian names, they're tough. Italian names are tough too,
yeah.
but
Well,
most people
interestingly enough, my last name is in Ukrainian, it's Omelchuk, which loosely translates to of the mills. So it's like the Ukrainian equivalent to Miller, which is awesome for me because Dennis Miller is my favorite comedian or one of my favorite comedians of all time. So to
Oh yeah,
have
he's killer.
some kind of linkage there makes me feel pretty good.
Yeah. So, all right, let's give a rundown about your story. Very
Yeah.
interesting story.
Hmm.
Um, where to begin? So about 3 years ago, you found me. We had a
Hmm.
call.
Yep.
You wanted to gain muscle, essentially.
Hmm.
Always a very, very skinny guy, as
Sure.
people can probably see
Hmm.
in the thumbnail. You tried everything to gain weight,
Hmm.
couldn't gain weight,
Yeah.
and I taught you high intensity training.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
not only high intensity training, as the thumbnail says, no gym.
Hmm.
Andy's been doing time static contraction, high intensity training for the last few years.
Hmm.
He's up 20 pounds from a skinnier guy who had a hard time gaining weight. And you've never actually lifted a weight in those last 3 years. You've only contracted your muscles
Hmm.
statically. So let's start there.
Sure.
What got you interested in putting on muscle? What was the motivation to start looking into this?
Motivation for starting muscle, building muscle. I think, I come from that generation of He-Man action figures. I'm 38. So it's He-Man action figures, Dragon Ball Z, WWE wrestling and those sorts of things. And you see these Herculean physiques on TV day in and day out, and you're trying to aspire to be just like that. And I think I'm of the last era of guys that were getting their information from bodybuilding magazines. So, I mean, Flex magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, and you would be like a jackrabbit, flipping through these magazines, and you see like, I want to look like Andrei Arlovsky, I want to look like Daniel Craig, I want to look like Hugh Jackman. So you start to you start to do these routines, and then you take, at least in my case, you stick with them for like maybe 1 week, 2 weeks or so, and it's always like the 5 days a week, slugging down protein shakes, eating 3,500 calories a day. And you would think that that would uh, show any sort of appreciable and visible changes in my physique, but it didn't happen. What happened to me, because I'd listen, if whatever program you type online between, I want to say 2006 through 2000, like 18, I've done it. I've done I've done Pavel Tatsulin's Effortless Superhuman. I've done Craig Weller's anti-glycolytic training. I've done Power 90X. I've done everything. I've done all the fads. And I got into yoga when I was still working as a teacher because I needed something to, you know, be flexible, be mobile, be strong. but it was giving me ankle tension. It was giving me hip impinge. It was just messing my body up. So I'm watching the London Real video podcast, and Steve Maxwell was on. And he showed a series of exercises with, I'll show you here, with this unique furniture moving strap, this forearm forklift. And he wrapped the strap around his waist, and he stood up against it, and he did this isometric belt squat. And I was like, I got to do this right away. So I ran to Home Depot. I purchased the strap, and I did the recommended 90 seconds duration of that exercise. My legs shook like a leaf. But it was in that moment that I realized that I had been exercising completely wrong. I had allegedly having the science, having the research, having the clinically proven everything. But I severely lacked the intensity, and I severely lacked the guidance. But then over time, I encountered Jay Vincent, and my results were good with statics on my own. But certainly, sir, you took me to the next level.
So what do you think? What did you learn from me that you think took you to the next level?
Your coaching is unique in the respect that you're like a problem solver. You're like, I think for a lot of impressionable young men like myself who just flip through the magazines or listen to all sorts of interviews and with exercise experts and things. I remember like one of the easier recommendations you gave me was just, hey, throw a little olive oil in your meals, eat a little extra carbs, eat a little extra protein. And you're thinking to yourself, like, it can't be that simple. It can't be that simple. And all of a sudden, the mass put on fairly quickly. I was actually quite surprised, and nearly effortlessly, just from little changes. And even in your coaching, with the community that you built, we're all sort of banding together and sort of helping each other problem solve. But typically speaking, one of us has a question, and then 2 seconds, boom, you already have a solution. And then a couple of days later, when we all get together in the group call, it's like, hey, Jay, I tried what you did, what you told me to do, and it works. So there's a difference between like the teacher and the coach. The teacher is going to distill the information. It's going to synthesize the information. The coach does that and shows you how to apply it and is there with you every step of the way. The coach, your success is a reflection of the coach's information. And the coach also takes a vested interest in your success, and you're a damn good coach. So that's probably what made the difference.
Well, thank you. And for guys who probably don't know and they want to follow you on Instagram,
yeah,
Andy now he teaches and coaches time static contraction. He's built a personal training business. You quit your job as a teacher.
Yeah.
You built a personal training business where now you're making more money than you were as a teacher, and you simply do static contractions with furniture lifting straps, and you don't even use dumbbells or anything, do you?
Not typically. I do incorporate some body weight and dynamic movement and machines upon request, but the nucleus of my programs that I give my clients are based on statics, and that's how I encountered you. It was I wanted to build mass because appearances are important, especially when you put yourself out there in the world. But I knew I was meant for something more, and I was meant for something bigger. And I'm sitting in a bar. My friend Kate was a barista at this particular bar in Wayne, New Jersey. And we taught, my background was in special education. I worked as an instructor for children with autism. And was having a really stressful day because, and I'd mentioned this on High Intensity Business with Lawrence Neal, but now I could kind of, years have passed since the incident, so I could talk about it. I got concussed at work. I got physically attacked at work. And I thought to myself, like, I love to teach, but I need to find something safer. I need to find something that's in line with my passions. So I remember sitting at that bar with my friend. She's, bussing tables or whatever. And I come across a video, and it's Jay Vincent, who I've seen him on YouTube. I've seen him floating around the high intensity training community. And he's talking about, like, I could coach you. I could, the sincerity behind you wanting to genuinely help people was really captivating. And so we got in touch, and you just motivated the crap out of me to where I was like, not only can I do this, but there was a intuition that you had, that you knew I was going to be successful, and that you took a vested interest in in seeing my business succeed every step of the way, which, obviously I'm really grateful for. But it was deeper than that, because I made one decision to quit my job, start a full-time business, teaching something that I really love. And my whole life has it's been a gigantic net positive. I'm with the girl of my dreams. I can, afford, I don't, money's not a struggle. I have more free time. I have more ideas than I know what to do with. And I'm also expanding my business a little bit with some different things. And it's simply because I made one decision, and you were instrumental in helping me shape and foster a dream that I had. So,
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. We were talking about it before I got on the call. It seems like a lot of guys just need to make that one decision, make that one leap for a change,
yeah.
and not be afraid to do it. Did you, what was the moment? Okay, so the moment you had where you're like, I need to make a change. Not only do I need to get in better shape, I need to make a change in career. That happened at your work.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what kind of fears did you have when deciding you might take a different route?
The fear that I had in making the decision.
Yeah,
Is that
were there
what
any
you
were there any
Mhm.
fears or doubts that you had? We'll get to the exercise stuff in a second,
Sure,
but
sure.
I think this stuff would be helpful for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that kind of feel stuck, and
Mhm.
they're kind of
Yeah.
afraid to take the path they want to take.
Mhm.
And I guess my question is, what fears did you have when it came to choosing a different path?
The safe. I always found that safety leads to complacency, and that if you're not doing things that are frightening you and not propelling you to taking risk, you're never really going to grow. So I pretty confidently was like, not only, is this going to work, but I'm going to ensure that it does. But there, in making that decision, comes the trepidation of, gosh, like imposter syndrome, um, or any sort of lingering self-doubt. But I'll never forget it. It was like you and I had made the decision. I'm following your coaching. I'm doing diet stuff. I'm taking steps towards building this training business. And I remember texting you about, like, hey, I got a lead on a new potential client. What do I do? And you were just like, and you said to me, he's like, dude, you already got it. You already got it. And so I put my earbuds in, I punched in the phone number, and I was kind of like, I was walking around to Barnes and Noble thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? As soon as the guy said hello, I was like, hi, Andy Omel, Health and Fitness. How are you, sir? And it's like method acting. You put on the suit and you become that character. You do it long enough, it becomes a part of you. It becomes embedded into your character. So now you take that to every area of life and you find out there's really nothing to fear anymore. But the initial first step is terrifying, but the subsequent steps after that are way easier. Doesn't mean it doesn't make things easier, but it gives you resiliency as opposed to a temporary confidence boost.
Yep, confidence, resiliency,
Mhm.
and yeah, once you get past that first speed bump,
Mhm.
it's just kind of smooth sailing. Once you get over that initial fear,
Mhm.
and you're like, shit, I can actually do this.
Right.
And then, you get another client, another client, another client,
Yeah.
another client. Now you're
Mhm.
like, okay, I know what the hell I'm doing. And you
Exactly.
built that. So you built a pretty busy business. How many
Yeah.
sessions are you training per week now?
Be, probably about 30
Okay.
sessions a week, about Monday through Friday, typically. And then every now and again, somebody requests like a Saturday or so, and I'll do virtual sessions from my apartment or wherever. And in my old line of work, when I used to work in special needs, we would do a lot of in-person instruction with kids and with families and stuff. And so what made me so excited about working with you is that you took something that I was, fairly comfortable and familiar with, and now you gave me the tools where I can start to shape and mold it and take the direction where I wanted to see it go, which is health and fitness.
Mhm.
So um, I see, like today, I'll have about another 4 or 5 sessions with different people, and thank God they're all clustered together because it makes the commute a hell of a lot easier. But it just trips me out a lot where I'm just like, wow, like a couple years ago this didn't exist. 3 years ago this did not happen. This wasn't life, and now I still get text messages and referrals from clients or messages from different services that I use to get clients, and people, the demand is still there. There's always going to be a need for somebody to walk you through the process the same way that you did with me. I do
And
that now
now,
with other people.
when it comes to the results for your clients, would
Yeah.
you say that applying just like static training, high intensity time
Mhm.
static training, got them better results than they did with other things? Because most clients
Mhm.
you get as a coach or a trainer, through my
Yeah.
experience, have tried lots of things like you have.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
in the beginning, they're probably not convinced. They're like, wait a minute, you mean I don't need to run? I don't need to lift
Mhm.
weights. I don't
Mhm.
even need to go to a gym and I can improve my fitness?
Right.
So that's probably the
Mhm.
pushback you might get slightly in the beginning. But have you noticed significantly better results based on feedback from your clients
Mhm.
doing just a time static contraction approach
Mhm.
versus all the other shit they did in the past?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Like there was one of my best success stories happened very early on, about 4 weeks into starting my business, which is, it sounds so outrageous. It has, I gotta say the story. So I was, I live in a building where there's a lot of retirees and seniors, and we have a community garage sale. So I took advantage, and I printed out business flyers and I got business cards constructed, and people who passed by saw my table, and I would hand them out some information and try to get phone numbers and talk with people and relationship build. And there was one woman who was at the far end of the block, and she heard my pitch all day. And she comes up to me with a tape measure. I don't know why, but she carried this tape measure in her pocket and she wrapped it around her thighs. And she told me that she has a 1 inch difference in circumference of each of her thighs. And she had trouble walking because during COVID, she had knee surgery, the physical therapy ran out. So the one leg was atrophied. And so she said she didn't even really see the demonstration of statics. She just heard it over and over and over that particular day. And I said to her, yeah, let's see what we can do, and I can help you out. And she was so appreciative of the fact that it wasn't these crazy positions. It wasn't anything that required external weight or resistance. It was just producing that force. And we talk about actin and myosin, the cross bridging right in that sweet mid range. And I had her doing, just to let people know what was going on. I had her doing time static leg press, time static hip adduction, just squeezing a yoga block, and then wrapping a belt around her outer thighs. That's a time static hip abduction based off of Ken Hutchins's leg press triad. And this woman within 4 weeks, who used to thrust, dude, she would sit in a chair like this and have to throw herself up in order to stand up. But now can not only get up and down off the floor comfortably, she resumed flamenco dance classes within a couple of weeks.
Wow. Within a couple of weeks. Huh?
Yeah. And then last summer, which she never made me privy to this. I had no idea. But last summer, she walked the pyramids, which was a goal of hers. So it was so gratifying. And I have, other, similar stories of individuals who just, they really look at me and they're like, well, he's kind of Bruce Lee-ish. He's kind of wiry, he's funny. He's got the orange strap, he's got a yoga block. What the hell is he going to teach me or show me? Then I put them on that belt squat. And then within 45 seconds or less, they are shaking like a leaf. And then all of a sudden they're like, damn, like this is something. They say, oh my God, I felt like I just did 100 squats and all I did was stand still. That's really gratifying. That's incredibly gratifying. And I'm standing on the heads of giants, man, like yourself, Drew Bay, Steve Maxwell, Ken Hutchins, who kind of made this accessible. And what I simply did was absorb it. It changed my body radically because I have, I don't mean to deviate too much from just client stuff, but I dislocated my elbow when I was 7 and it still clicks. I have a issue with my shoulder and I have, I got some issues with my hips from just poor exercise. And I did dancing as a kid, trained dancing and stuff. So my body was all kinds of jacked. And then yoga certainly didn't help. And time static contraction put me back together. And so we have the before and after thumbnail on this video. Me looking emaciated and frail and skinny and just not healthy. I was stuck at 127 to about 133 for years. 4 years. I could not get anywhere with my weight, with my strength. And then encountering time static contraction, encountering you, I walk around with a very comfortable 154 pounds, which is something that now I can, what I use to encourage my clients with. I'm just like, we just got to up the intensity and dial in the diet. That's pretty much it. And then it's like what Doug McGuff talks about, punching in the card.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you found that, it was even hold on one second. I just got to shut this door.
Yeah, no problem.
So you found that it was rehabilitative for yourself and other people too.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of counterintuitive to traditional physical therapy. Physical therapy has all these kind of weird, in many cases, useless exercises. Right. And, you were able to fix a lot of injuries just without any movement at all.
Right. It's funny too that you bring that up. I think with some, not saying all physical therapist, but then some, you go to a physical therapist and you have a knee issue, they give you a TheraBand and you're doing external rotation to fix your knee, but what do your shoulders have to do with your knee, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I'll give you a great story that actually happened recently. I have a client, 63-year-old woman who was having some shoulder blade issues, and she needs to train her back. Like, I always, generally with my clients, I do like the broad spectrum of major muscle groups. And as a trainer, I kind of have to decide, what exercises, and that's the beautiful versatility about statics, is that I have some people will pull on a chair instead of a strap. I have some people squeezing, if they're doing a static chest fly, I have them either squeeze their hands, squeeze a door frame, squeeze a yoga block, or even just cross their arms and just contract their chest hard. Depends on the individual. So this one woman, I was having her pull, sitting on the floor and pulling a strap. And she was telling me, she's like, geez, my shoulder blades are just a little uncomfortable doing this. And so, drawing back, what I'll do is I had this woman sit against the wall, and she's contracting her upper back, elbows to the wall, and she's doing what they call a simple row. I'll pair that with a time static contraction, some grip work, and a TSC bicep curl. And there's your, we've taken the compound movement, which was making her uncomfortable, we split it up into 3 simpler movements and gets the job done. And that's where, somebody like yourself as a trainer and as a coach has been instrumental in helping me help hundreds of other people.
So in terms of, what does your workout look like? Mm-hmm. In particular, what's it look like for your clients?
Sure. So for my personal workout, lately, and it's funny because it's my first and one that I've run to and run away from, is the Big Six. So I'll do a time static squat, time static pull down, time static overhead press, time static row, time static chest press, and a time static deadlift. And with my clients, we work from bottom to top. So we'll start with lower body. We'll do a static leg press, static leg extension. Some clients prefer the wall sit, and then we just kind of work our way up. Typically full body, and then depending upon clients' progress, I'll change around some of the workouts to assist and aid in recovery.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a simple routine, and as people probably, so when you're doing this time static contraction stuff, mm-hmm. you're sticking to like one set, couple sets. What are you doing usually?
One set typically. Okay. It's funny because, and that's the thing too, as a trainer, you start to learn and pick up on these things a little bit more intuitively as time goes on. So like, for instance, I work with a couple, and they're really athletic. They're both in their 60s. And so they like to work out together. So I have them do the same 10 exercises twice a week. They just like, I've suggested different things, and they just like, hey, we just like doing it this way. So what I've had them, the classic static protocol was 50% effort at 30 seconds, 50% effort. I'm sorry, 75% effort at 30 seconds, and then 100% effort at 30 seconds. And with this couple, I just add an extra 10 right at the end, and that's plenty. But then I've also made observations on some other clients. Like, for instance, this one gentleman that I work with, he's in his early 70s. And when I have him doing the time static overhead press, like his shoulders get so fatigued, I had to reduce it to a minute because he couldn't sustain. 90 seconds was too was too much of a contraction, too much. The effort was already, the effort was already there within a minute. So just having to trim it down. And so that's where I got to make those decisions with my clients. And that's why, record keeping and checking in with people will help me and, make those informed decisions.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question here. I'm just spotlighting you.
Yeah.
If you can go ahead, answer this question here. I have problems developing glutes. Love to add some time static contraction to improve it. What would you guys suggest? I'm just going to run and grab my charger while you answer.
Sure. The greatest glute exercise I have ever seen, period. Not just with time static contractions, but exercise dynamic as well. You might want to look up Steve Maxwell's Handbook of Functional Isometrics, and he has an exercise called the shoulder glute bridge. You take the forearm forklift wrapped around your back, put your feet through the loops, lay on the ground, and you're essentially doing like a hip bridge. It is the best glute developer I've ever used, and I get a lot of compliments on my glutes from everybody. So, and then that's like the number one thing. Guys and girls, everybody that I train, they want to know, how do I target the glutes? So that's in my opinion, that's the best one. The second best is doing a time static contraction hip raise, where you could do this on a couch, resting your shoulders on the edge of the couch, head in a neutral position, and then just bridge your hips up so that your knees are at 90 degree angle, sort of like a table pose in yoga. That's a really good one. And then a lying hamstring curl could also be helpful for developing the posterior. And you don't even need the strap, really. I've been able to teach people with no equipment how to contract their muscles and to get into these positions fairly easily and fairly comfortably. Because that's one of the beautiful things about statics, is that if something doesn't feel quite right, like if somebody, for instance, I mentioned earlier, if somebody's squeezing a yoga block, maybe their shoulder fatigue's a little bit earlier. Maybe they've got some elbow issue and they can't keep the elbow at 90 degrees. So I just have them cross their arms and just contract their chest that way. I have them squeeze their hands. I had one client squeeze a Bosu ball, just hug it. Didn't matter. Like, what matters the most is the placing the muscles in the mid-range position, where we get that actin and myosin cross bridging. And we want to sustain that effort for 60 to 90 seconds. And the other thing, too, that a lot of people tend to forget, we're starting at 50% effort, and we're gradually ramping the effort up to 100%. So when you're doing any time static contraction set, you want to think about, all right, this is 50%, 52, 54, 56, 58. You could use a metronome. You can think about it in your head. And I like to coach people by reminding them, every little exhale, you contract a little bit harder, And then by the end of the 90 seconds, your heart rate is skyrocketing. And we know that recent meta-analysis that says that isometric exercises are the best at lowering systolic and diastolic blood pressure. It's like a myriad of benefits. And I've encouraged a lot of my clients. It's like, yo, your heart and lungs did the equivalent of like 9 sprints today, and we didn't even have to move an inch. So,
yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is that, all exercise is intense muscle contractions. Mm-hmm. Whether or not the muscle shortens and lengthens throughout this contraction phase, it doesn't make much of a difference in terms of stimulating strength, stimulating muscle, recruiting muscle growth, and stimulating cardiovascular improvement. So when you want to stimulate a muscle to grow, you simply have to excite or contract as many motor units as you possibly can.
Right.
That comes down to effort. Doesn't come down to range of motion, doesn't come down to exercise selection. It comes down to placing effort on that particular muscle's ability to contract. Now, that same effort, when you're contracting a muscle extremely intensely, places a high demand on your cardiovascular and your metabolic system to supply that muscle with the oxygen and the substrate that it needs to produce the energy to make the contraction.
Right.
So a big misconception a lot of people have is that they need to be doing cardio, or they need to be doing all this movement in order to stimulate cardiovascular improvements. And it doesn't appear to be true. Have you found a significant improvement in your client's cardiovascular system doing it this way?
Absolutely. I mean, the first woman I mentioned, she's resuming dance classes, and with a high rate of effort. I have one gentleman who is an avid basketball player at 64, who, all he does is statics with me twice a week and maybe some walking, because him and his wife like it. The cardiovascular improvements are quite amazing with statics, because we're essentially teaching the muscles to, perform more efficiently. When you're contracting harder, we're trying with statics in particular. It's like any other style of high intensity training with that one set to failure, but we're basically like doing it in the most controlled fashion. And as more effort is produced, that beautiful inroading effect happens without even having to move an inch.
Sweet. So if you guys got any questions about this, about particular exercises or how to apply static contraction, go ahead and submit them. But I guess the main point of this is that you don't need a complicated workout. You don't need to necessarily go to the gym. All you simply need to do is contract your muscles hard against resistance. And I guess Andy is living proof that you don't need tons of sets and reps and all that and exercises to build muscle. You just need a basic application which challenges your muscles intensely. Right?
Yeah, pretty much. It's like I love working out with compound exercises. That's just my shtick. I have a lot of other things going on outside of exercise. And that was one of the appeals of high intensity training in general. It's the idea that exercise should make a part of my week, but it shouldn't dominate my entire week. We should be able to, do other things and explore our passions, because we're stronger, because we're more cardiovascularly fit, and not as something to just completely be almost neurotic about it. Whereas for myself, every 7 to 12 days, I'll do the big 6, and then occasionally I'll throw in some forearm work and some ancillary muscle groups. But I've noticed my calves and my forearms lately. I don't know. Things are improving. In a 12.5-minute workout, I accomplish way more than I would have done, say, in my younger days, doing the stupid P90X videos for 45 minutes to an hour at a time. Just the useless amount of exercises that are, over time are risky, because if you were doing a lateral raise movement, you start out with 10 pounds, you move to say 15, and then, you can maybe comfortably do 20 pounds, but past that, the rotator cuff and those joints and everything, it's so delicate. Whereas with statics, you can sequentially recruit those motor units and muscle fibers in the absolute safest way possible. So that's certainly a gigantic advantage that statics have over over other modalities. And over time, you're, neurologically you become more efficient at recruiting those motor units. And there's always some place to go with statics. There's always a new apex by which you can that you could reach. And you simply just give yourself a little more rest to challenge yourself even harder the next time.
So how do you track your workouts? A lot of people are probably curious about that.
Yeah. So over the last year and a half, I implemented feedback statics. It's Ken Hutchins has a great article transitioning from TSC to feedback statics. And feedback statics is essentially using a machine or a device that has computer feedback that could read generated force output. So I bought the SUI Sensor Pro 2. It's a great little device, and I hook it up to like my door. I bought an isometric platform by which I can do static squats and deadlifts with, and it's pretty remarkable where I get to make rapid improvements and have like this numerical figure that I always have to beat. So I took some time off during the holidays from training because I like to take a little bit of a layoff, even though I'm still training clients. And I want to say in January, my average was about 88 pounds on the static belt squat. And then in February, I went up to 137 pounds of force on the static belt squat. But then last month, I shattered my records completely at 211 pounds, a sustained 60-second contraction at 211 pounds. You talk about trembling, momentary muscle failure for a solid minute. It was unlike anything I've ever experienced. So tracking my workouts using that device and taking records has it makes me feel confident that I have something by which to measure, and and then the confidence in knowing that every single time I train, I'm making progress.
So how do you spell it? SUI? I want to bring it up for people to
Oh yeah,
see.
sure. SUIFF.
SUIF. Oh.
Yep. Sui is a pig, or would you try to call pigs over?
All right, I'll show people what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So you're noticing yourself continuing to get stronger.
Mm-hmm.
In for a lot of people who may not know this, measuring strength based on how much you can lift in a particular exercise is not an accurate way to measure how strong your muscles are. A lot of exercise research uses a dynamometer like this, something that measures the amount of force that you're inputting into it. And it's a much more accurate measure of your muscular strength. So you notice still after a couple of years of doing this, you're still able to perform or produce more strength and more force over time. It doesn't seem like you're really hitting a plateau, are you?
Not really, no. And it's funny that you say that because I subscribe to I did subscribe to the idea that first 3 to 5 years of doing HIIT, you kind of just coast a little bit. But I mean, I've been doing statics since this is 2000. I've been doing statics since about 2020, so about 5 years, and I'm still finding that I'm getting stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Like week to week, even. Like I'm amazed. Like it's and we've talked, and you and I have talked about like how do I refine this? How do I make this better? Again, even though Aristotle and Plato still had their relationship, and their rapport, even though they went off in different directions, I still consult you when I have a question, which is one of the benefits of being coached by somebody like yourself with all this experience. And when I have a question about my own training, I've asked you questions about these things, and even lately, like I've been just I've been imbibing and rereading the feedback static material, and just sometimes I don't even care about the number. I'm just going to go as hard as I can, like on the static pull down, just until my limbs start to shake. And then when I can't, and there have been times where I'm doing statics, and you would think that, a heavy leg press or a heavy pull down machine, you can't lift your arms. I'm pulling loading straps and a PVC pipe connected to that little gauge, and I can't lift up my arms for like a day and a half. It's pretty remarkable, and I'm not even lifting a single weight. It's the force output that's the most important. I remember you had actually said it once. It might have been in one of your live streams, or you might have said it in the group. It's like force is what a muscle needs to produce. Movement just prevents you from getting bored.
Yeah, that's kind of, and that's. I think statics would probably be the best approach to exercise, because it's the safest, it's the most efficient,
Yeah.
it requires very little equipment.
Mhm.
But you got to remember, we're dealing with people, and people
Exactly.
have emotions, and people get bored. So when people ask me, can I build an optimal physique with statics? The answer is physiologically, theoretically, yes. Practically, who knows? Maybe with something that measures your force output, like the device that you use, to where you're pushing is, you're trying to push harder than last time, and you're contracting as hard as you can. That's definitely helpful. But honestly, statics are probably the best approach. And the belief that you need, and also the other belief that you need to be loading muscles in a stretch position, or all this kind of shit to build muscle. I mean, anecdotally, even just, based on your experience, that's absolutely not true, because you did that in the past and you didn't build muscle. So what you're able to do is,
we all did dumb shit as we were younger. I don't think I ever told you this. You know what the dumbest shit I ever did was? I'm a big wrestling fan, and the former ECW television champion Rob Van Dam has a world record for doing what was called the Van Dam lift, where he would do a side split across two benches, and he would basically deadlift a weight in between his thighs and hold the weight for 5 seconds, 3 seconds, or whatever. I did that in high school as a way. I was a weird kid, so I did stupid things. I was able to do that at 20 pounds. Did my physique change? No. Like, here's what Rob Van Dam is doing. Here's what all these so-called experts are doing. And then here comes along Steve Maxwell with an orange lifting strap, and that combined with your coaching and some trial and error along the way. I mean, when I say it's the only thing that works, it was the only thing that works. And then if I wasn't convinced enough, I have a robust clientele between the ages of 10 and 82 that I do this with. Some people I train twice a week. Some people I train once. Even like the 82-year-old, dude, I had her doing the static pull down. And when she first started, she was like, oh gosh, I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I'm able to do. And I said, her name is Ro. I said, Ro, you can do this. Within 12 weeks, she went from 25 pounds of force to 60.
And the cool thing is, it's not really neurological either, because there's really no skill factor when it comes to time static contraction. And that's the thing, like with a lot of people who are using gym equipment, they'll notice that they're able to use much more weight in the first couple months or first several weeks. And then they think that they hit a plateau. And they say, well, if I'm not getting stronger, or I'm not getting stronger every workout, I can't be growing muscle.
Right.
And that's not true. You are getting stronger. It just may not be measured or demonstrated in that exercise. So you can see, even after doing this for a couple of years, you're still getting stronger, which
Yes.
means, you know, they parrot the Mike Mentzer, Arthur Jones phrase.
Sure.
You have to be getting stronger to be adding muscle.
Right.
But then they go and do the chest press and they say, well, I haven't added any weight in 4 to 8 weeks. I must not be building muscle.
Right.
But if we were to measure how much force their muscles are
Yeah.
producing,
Yep.
you would see an increase. And then you would rest assured that you were adding muscle because you are, in fact, getting stronger. This is one thing that confuses people a lot. And I think maybe adding some static exercises into their gym workout to be able to measure whether or not their muscles are actually producing more force over time and address the sticking point or plateau from there.
I think that if you wanted to, because it was kind of interesting. I did this as a test not too long ago. I have a client of mine. I train her at her in-home gym, and she's about, I want to say, God, let me think. She's about maybe 4'8" or 4'11". She's really tiny, super strong. And she's like, I want you to go on the leg press and do what you have me do, which at the time I wasn't able to move that stack like she could, because I have her doing it and she works out with me twice a month because, you know, her schedule's busy and those sorts of things. And I'm trying to muscle this leg press and I can't do it. But then just from doing statics, I was able to do that after a few weeks of really because that humbled me a bit, because I'm just like, I know I can move this stack. I'm bigger than this person, you know? But then when I was really honing in on that's why I don't even think about numbers anymore. I'm just like, I just got to produce as much force as possible. I was able to move that stack effortlessly, you know? And that really gave me some confidence that okay, there might be, it's not a perfect 1-to-1 ratio, but between an external weight and what we're doing with force output, but it is encouraging to see that there is some sort of cross bridging between the two.
Yeah, your strength will transfer. So that, and keep in mind, guys, the only thing that transfers is muscular strength. So if you were to do static exercise for a year and then go on to a bench press, you may notice you're able to bench press slightly more weight, but you haven't practiced it enough to be able to demonstrate your muscular strength in association with that skill. So if you were to practice that bench press for a few weeks, you would notice your bench press shoot right up. But that's what confuses a lot of people, is they're under the impression muscle strength is how much weight they can move in an exercise, when it's not.
It's funny you bring that up too, because in my younger days, I remember Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Body, had Pavel Tatsulin's Effortless Superhuman Protocol. It was 2 sets of 2 on a deadlift and maybe like a chest press or overhead press. Super minimalistic program. And I was obsessed with deadlifting, absolutely obsessed. My deadlift went from 50 pounds to 180 in less than a year. But it was always because I didn't have the proper coaching and stuff, there was always these misfirings, lower back would take more of the brunt of the movement or whatever, or and especially the emphasis on ballistic, as fast as possible, type of exercise. Whereas when I'm doing the time static contraction deadlift, and sometimes I'll just use the strap, I'll stick my rear end against the wall, and I'm just trying to do that beautiful back extension against that strap. 180-pound barbell didn't feel like that at all. It didn't near come close to that. So it's the recruitment of motor units and muscle fibers. That's what we're looking for. Not so much how much can you do or whatever. It's just it's the chasing of the chasing the dragon of numbers, and then also like you'd mentioned before about skills. Of course, those who are more proficient at the skills are going to be able to do it easier. That's how they,
Yeah. There was a question about what static actually is. If you are, let's see, if you are getting stronger, not gaining weight, are you not growing muscle tissue? It seems to me. So it's all neurological. Well, the thing is, if you're getting strong, so in the beginning, the nervous system the nervous system is most responsible for your strength or your ability to move weight in the beginning. I would say after about 8 to 12 weeks, you've pretty much tapped out how your nervous system is going to adapt. So the thing is, if you're getting stronger, but you're not growing muscle, a lot of people think that they're not growing muscle, but they are. People need to realize that muscle growth is quite a slow process. You are literally building contractile tissue out of microscopic molecules of substrate. So I think what happens is a lot of people think they're not gaining muscle, but they're not gaining it at the rate that they want. So I posted something today that said people drastically overestimate what can be accomplished by exercise in a month and severely underestimate what can be accomplished in a year. So what I teach people in the coaching is the first several weeks, I'm teaching you how to contract your muscles as hard as you can, which is something like you said, when you were doing statics, you didn't realize how much harder you can contract your muscles. And that's where I come in by reviewing your workouts. And then once you have that down, then we start to look at dietary changes, and we piece that all together in a way that people can realistically stick with over a long period of time, which I helped you with your diet.
Absolutely.
People are under the impression that diet is very, very complicated and it's hard to stick to. But what I do is I like to look at people's diet habits, make a couple of adjustments so that way it's not a big lifestyle change. So you can stick to it for a long enough period of time to let those results manifest over time.
Right. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because again, that was like the most wonderful surprise out of your coaching was the amount of mass I was able to gain. Just being stuck around 127, 133, thinking I was looking good as a skinny guy, and also being complacent and thinking, well, this is just as good as it gets. And, understanding the sort of hit mantra of these are our genetics, we got to accept them. And that, that's pretty much it. But I'm living proof that, and especially, because I got ill in late 2023 into early 2024. I put on, and then just from restarting the diet and not really making any major changes, plus consistent training, and then even taking a layoff, I'm just surprised by how much I was able to gain in such a relatively short period of time. And now my diet, I mean, if I'm doing like maintenance calories at this point without really much thinking, and I think my metabolism is also changing too. I'm not entirely sure if that's the case, but but yeah, dude, I'm just completely stunned and amazed by how sort of like how simple it is, as opposed to following, all these sort of complicated. And I'm so out of the loop with the guys that are trending. I just remember back in the day, Probolics, SR, protein shakes, and some other things. And
it's all bullshit.
The shakes were helpful as I was putting on mass, but in order to get there, didn't make much of a difference, if anything. Just you have a video on your YouTube channel that I recommend everybody watch if they're skinny, because essentially those are the tips that helped me out. However, one of the benefits of coaching is having access to not just Jay, but other people who are also really good problem solvers at this sort of thing. That we are a collective of men who are trying to head towards the same goal and direction, and having that community and people keeping you accountable makes goal setting a hell of a lot easier than if you were doing it on your own.
Yeah, guys. So keep in mind with my coaching platform, there's no time limit on it. So, and I think this is what helps people like Andy get such good results. Hold on one second. I don't know why it does that.
That's all good.
Okay. So the thing is, you have access to me and the other guys in the group who have been through this indefinitely, which gives you a support and accountability network as you're going through this, which helps you adhere to this whole approach. And that, again, contributes to doing it long term and getting those long term results. Mm-hmm. So, Andy, like all the other guys in my coaching group, you're going to have access to me and other people to guide you through every step of the way, every single day. And I think that is what's mostly important for getting good results, because people generally try things for 4, 6, 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then just push it aside.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have when you make this more of a hobby, it's always in your mind and you're sticking to it. And it also becomes fun. And that's what I try to do in my coaching too, is make this kind of like a hobby for people if they're interested in it. So that way it's always in the back of their mind. They're always thinking about it. It's very difficult to quit. So if you guys are interested in seeing results like Andy had, it doesn't matter if you go to a gym, you want to train from home, you want to train with body weight. All that really matters is that you learn how to train intensely. And that's what I teach in my coaching. And of course, I teach you how to diet in a simple way that gives you everything you need out of diet, and in a way that you can stick to it for a long term, because you're still currently adhering to that diet, aren't you? And it's not
absolutely. Yeah.
It's not, a lot of people are under the impression that diet is hard. It gets in the way of your life. Yours isn't, right?
Not in the slightest. If anything, the diet works for me in my lifestyle because I'm pretty active, 5-6 days a week, training people, driving to people's houses. I teach a senior fitness class in town as well. We do static. So, and I'm talking a lot too, when meeting people, and it's a big consumption of energy, but the diet advice that you've given me, the workout advice that you've given me, even as a trainer, now I appreciate it even more. And see, not just the methodology behind it, but like it's pretty simple. It's just that we have the mental block because it can't be that easy. Mm-hmm. It can't be a 2-ounce lifting strap, or even with some of your other clients in our group, some guys have access to just like 20-pound dumbbells and their bodies are phenomenal just from minimal equipment. Some guys have access to machines and they're also getting phenomenal results. It's taking a look at what somebody has, and a good coach like yourself is going to help facilitate those results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guys, it's not so much the workout or the equipment, it's the application. It's applying the exercise to your muscles. And takes a while to learn that, but once you do, you end up like Andy. You're going to continue to make gains, and you can't necessarily unlearn it. So you're going to maintain at least everything you've built. So if you guys want to see good results, even if you're a skinny guy, if you're an overweight guy, that's what my coaching is for. I'm going to work with you directly every day, along with everyone else in the coaching group, including Andy. And we're going to guide you to the best physique you've ever had, and you're going to be able to maintain it. All right. Thank you, Andy, for sharing your story. If people want to follow you and see what you're doing, what's your Instagram?
My Instagram is instagram.com/_Andy Omel. And I'm pretty accessible. I love answering questions for people and answering questions about statics. You could see a litany of different clients. I've worked with seniors. I've worked with amputees. I've worked with young people, I've worked with pretty much everybody on the broad spectrum. I always like to say my clientele ranges from 10 to 80, and most of us fit within that demographic. So it just goes to show you that Mike Mentzer wasn't the only person who benefited from HIIT. And, there's regular people just like you and me who can see phenomenal results and transform their physique within a relatively short period of time, and not just have results, but lasting results.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Something you can stick to in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Go ahead, follow Andy on Instagram. If you'd like me to have him on again and talk more about, in detail what static looks like, maybe some demonstration.
Yeah.
Go ahead, leave a comment in the description if you guys want to learn more about this. But of course, follow him on Instagram and you can learn quite a bit about time static contraction. If you're limited in time, you're limited in equipment, you can still train your body and get extremely good results with very, very little. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember, hit the like, subscribe, and the bell because I'm going to be doing a lot more live streams and trying to bring you guys some value that you can take with you and apply to your own life and get in better shape and save time doing it. See you later.
All right. Take it easy.